This is Group 7's Addendum for our presentation number 2. I'm Diego.
I'm Will.
I'm Mohamed.
I'm Brandi.
In our presentation, we talked about the example of Santa Claus, the myth of Santa Claus being passed down from parent to child, and whether or not this lying can be morally judged, and is the recipient's role important in this judging of a lie. And I think there's a couple of factors to look at. For instance, children don't quite understand the concept of metaphors, and this is seen in the formal operational stage of a child's development, which occurs from 11 and onward. Before that, they're stuck in a concrete operational stage and pre-operational stage, and that lacks abstract thought, which you get at 11, which is the ability to understand myths like Santa Claus encompassing the whole world to deliver presents to everyone in just one night. So more than likely, a child's going to find out anyway that it's not possible for Santa Claus to exist. But more on that later. It's been hypothesized that oxytocin, a bonding chemical, which is used in trust, can be passed down to children via breastfeeding. Also, I wouldn't be too surprised to learn that there's some evolutionary linkage between offspring sticking close to their parents just because of trust and because it benefits survival. So this parent-to-child trust is what this presentation is going to deal with, and that's what I'd like to add to the presentation.
A child being told that Santa Claus is real and then finding out that their parents lied to them at such a young age is hard to handle. According to Harris's take on the trust concept, the child will start to question everything that the parent has ever told them, from eating their vegetables to the tooth fairy. The child will now have a hard time believing that what anyone tells them because the people that they trusted the most lied. The parents are faced with the burden of whether they keep traditions alive by upholding a little white lie, or tell the truth and risk having their children look at them as a liar. As a child progresses through life, they will become more accepting of the Santa Claus lie and mature enough to understand that not all lying is meant to hurt the recipient, and that the person telling the lie may have had their reasons for why they decided to lie in the first place.
So the role is important because when the child realizes that they're lied to, they have to make a decision on what to do with that information. So would they see then that everything their parents told them previously was a lie, or would they then realize that the lie about Santa Claus had good motives behind it and that it was judicious by their parents to tell them that lie? They'll then hopefully understand that not all lying is based on the intent to deceive, and although they weren't told the truth in this situation, it's not necessarily harming them by being told this lie, but rather they're positively conditioned by that lie to act good all year round, and Santa Claus will bring them presents instead of coal. In Twain's reading, The Decay of Lying, he insists that it's better to lie for the greater good rather than to tell the truth in certain situations. So in the case of Santa Claus, it goes back to whether it's judicious or not on the parents' part. And Twain says, an injurious truth has no merit over an injurious lie. So by this, he's saying that it's more of a heroic or it's a better action on the liar's part if you do so for the greater good rather than telling the truth that could lead to somewhat of a disadvantage later on in the child's life.
Children's author Mac Barnett introduces an interesting argument in his TED Talk, Why a Good Book is a Secret Door. He discusses the idea of honest lies. He talks about how art is a lie, but it makes us realize the truth. For example, a children's book can have a talking animal, and we all know animals can't talk. However, the message conveyed by the story can be truthful. This relates to the idea of Santa Claus. Although we know that there isn't a man who lives in the North Pole with elves and goes around the world in one night, there is a story about a man named Saint Nick who gave presents to people. Santa Claus is merely a symbol. There's the responsibility of the recipient to overlook the lie and find the truth within it. In his TED Talk, Mac Barnett talks about how he told the little girl at camp that throwing fruit in the ivy would cause it to be overgrown with melons. In the TED Talk, Barnett states, Riley knew she didn't grow a melon in 7 days, but she also knew that she didn't know. And it's a weird place. This weird place he's referring to is exactly where kids should be when they realize that Santa Claus isn't real. They need to know that he doesn't exist, but they also need to know that he does.
Furthermore, we'd like to add a concluding remark which ties everything together. We've seen Harris's text give us examples about lies in relationships. There's Twain's text, which talks about judicious lying, and then Barnett, the power of storytelling, and using lies to get to some common truth, or just reading a book for fun. And we've concluded that the child can't be at fault for misjudging the lie, and their role is important, but it's going to be masked by the ignorance or curiosity of youth. It is unlikely that the trust between child and parent will be too damaged when they find out that Santa Claus isn't real, because I mean, all those presents, just think about that. But what this really does is serve as an archetype for accepting the truth when you, albeit through the use of lies, when you figure out that you've been lied to.